Hi, everyone, and welcome. So great to see so many here. And welcome to our online audience as well, to join us today for a really conversation about generative AI and what's in it for you when it comes to generative AI. This is something that I'm sure you've heard a lot about, and I want to take this opportunity to really go through what does that mean for you. The agenda is kind of clear and straightforward. We're going to go through a quick introduction of who I am and why I'm standing here, myths and kind of the mystique around generative AI, generative AI today, and pros and cons, and what's next. I hope you're looking forward to it, and I am very much looking forward to the last portion of this presentation, where I would like to open up for questions from you, for ideas, for thoughts. We have about 10 to 15 minutes to do that. So if you feel like you have questions you'd like to ask at the end of this presentation, please come forward a little bit, since we don't have a mic, so we can hear your questions. So who am I, and why am I standing here? Always the most interesting part of the conversation for me, seeing as, of course, it's always easier for me to talk about technology than it is to talk about myself. I'm Sarah Ouakim, and I drive open innovation at Accenture here in the Nordics. I work with all of our startup partners, emerging technologies, so across the board. When you think about immature technologies, I am part of the team at Accenture that handles adoption of those technologies and also scaling them for our global clients. My background is in programming and deep tech, so machine learning, artificial intelligence, but also XR, AR. And I used this moment to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like when you're using data about yourself, because this is actually a word cloud about who I am as a person. A word cloud really will show you, okay, what kind of data shows up when you're talking about yourself. So I did this from actually my own LinkedIn, and this is what popped up. And interestingly enough, my role as a sister and as a daughter came really tiny, because it was on LinkedIn. So my professional life kind of takes over. However, my role as an aunt to my nephews, because a lot of them are just as I am, tech geeks and gamers, that one took on a much bigger role in my word cloud. Multicultural, multi-technical, multi-technologist, multilingual. Very happy to be here and have been looking forward to this presentation for quite some time. Let me dive right into it. Why am I here? Generative AI is on everybody's communication. Everybody's talking about it. What does that mean? I want to just start by showing you a little bit of a history around AI. It's nothing new. As you can see, the first dot on this schedule, or this graph, starts in 1950. So artificial intelligence is by far one of the technologies we've been trying out, working with, researching in, and implementing for really the longest time, since computers have been around. Now, for many, it may have been new about 2 years ago when OpenAI launched and their ChatGPT functionality launched. But again, keep in mind, this is not a new technology. It's an evolution of a technology. Which brings me to myths and mystique. It is so easy to make something sound really strange and dangerous and, oh my God, what is that going to do to us? And it's brand new and we don't know it. The dangers of something new. Keep that in mind. It's not that new, and it is definitely not dangerous. However, you do have this effect. Everybody is so excited about this, but really doesn't know what the value of it is. So how do we get value out of it? We really start by understanding it. One of the first things I do when I jump into a room, and often it's a C-suite room, full of men. We're women in tech. One of the main reasons I love speaking here, I love coming here, is no woman left behind when it comes to technology. We want to be part of the conversation. We want to be in the room. To be in the room, we need to learn to simplify things. One of the ways to simplify things is really to show that we understand the terminology. When I go into a room, often fully, only female there, all men, one of the first questions I tend to ask is, do you know what generative AI is at all? And usually it's quiet, because it's either somebody trying to really, really hard to kind of dig themselves into a really big hole, showing that they don't know what it is, because the answer to that is quite easy. It's a branch of artificial intelligence that creates models that are content generating. Anyone that gives you more than that as a sentence to define generative AI either doesn't know enough about it or wants to exclude you from the conversation. It is the only definition you need to bring with you. And often, by knowing that, you know more than most. It is a content-generating model. That's it. And what is content? Images, texts, audio, you name it, but that's all it is. So what is artificial AI, though? So since generative AI is a branch of artificial AI, what is artificial AI? It is an evolving technology. As I showed on the graph, it's an evolving technology that tries to simulate intelligence or human intelligence, and it still tries. Keep in mind that it's still just trying. It's not better, and it's not there yet. It's still trying to simulate human intelligence. How does it work? It uses methods, learning methods, to actually generate original and realistic content. That's how generative AI works. And how do you start a generative AI model? You use something called a prompt. So now I'm actually going literally through the jargon so that we can get on to the next step, which is, how does it impact you? What is a prompt? The prompt is really just a sentence that you're using to get the generative AI model to do what you're trying to make it do. So it could be a simple sentence nowadays. You use, hey, help me write a congratulatory letter to my high school friend that I haven't met for the past 20 years, but we were really, really, really close back then. We've lost touch. It'll write you a letter to send to that friend. It could be a visual art picture, or an art asset, or a 3D asset, or could be just about anything that you want to create. You'll use a prompt to communicate with that generative AI model. So what are the different types of generative AI? I just mentioned a few of them. There's a language generation generative AI. There's an image generation. There is a code generation. There's a voice synthesis. And there's a chatbot. There are chatbot models. All of these are existing models, so there's nothing here that you actually need to create. You could, if you're in the programming field, and in that case, you wouldn't need me to explain to you what generative AI is, but most of them actually exist. Actually, all of these that I've mentioned, you could use. So in language generation, many of you know what ChatGPT is. ChatGPT is a language generation, or GPT-4 is a language generation model. You can just put in a prompt, and it'll give you a text. Image generation, there's a few of them. You've probably heard of DALL-E 4 and DALL-E 2, and Midjourney. All of these are image generation models. Code generation, So that's actually how it all started, helping you to actually code, figure out mistakes that you may have made that will actually go through code and help you and support you in creating code. Voice synthesis, creating human, natural-sounding human voices. So that's kind of the voice synthesis part of it. There's one called the script that I'm pretty sure is the most common one, but there's also listener. And you can literally, from text, create human-like voices. And then there's the chatbot. Now, I love the chatbot because we've been hearing about chatbots for the past 24 years, 25 years. Chatbot's been around since 1966, believe it or not. The first one is Eliza. And fun fact, the reason I cannot forget that name is because, well, okay, I'm going to come out of the musical lover closet. I love musicals, and it's named after Eliza Doolittle, who's the main character in one of my favorite musicals, My Fair Lady. Eliza was created in 1966. That's the first chatbot. And it was created as a therapist. Just a pure communication built on a whole lot of questions that they were putting in to actually support some kind of a conversation. But if you ask it a question that it doesn't recognize, it just turns it right back at you. You know, how do I deal with my father's abuse? Oh, how do you deal with your father's abuse? So this was a therapist, so that's why I took that question. So and the reason I'm saying this is because now chatbots have evolved, and you have something called ChatGPT, which is a chatbot that will actually use human-like language, conversational language, will answer you the way another human being would answer you. And a far cry from what we used to have in the 2000s and the 2010s, where we had a very decision tree-based chatbot evolution. And decision trees are, if you've ever seen a flowchart, it's a yes, I said this, and then if I say this, then say this, answer this. If I say no, go to this answer. If I say yes, go to that answer, and you have to program it. It actually asks for a lot of programming. And that's about all I need you to know to be part of the conversation about generative AI. And feel free at the end of this, if you feel like I've missed something or there's a terminology that you don't see here or would you like an answer on, feel free to ask at the end of the presentation. We'll have about 10 to 15 minutes where we can go through it. The meat busting. I love the meat busting, because so many people have actually gotten stuck on, so what does generative AI do? And should we be afraid of it? And is there a way we can get away from not using it? The truth is, all of these myths are really coming from people that are not using generative AI or are only using it very superficially. One of the biggest myths is it literally is a recent development. It's brand new. And we've just debunked it through the diagram that I showed you when I started this presentation. It is not new. It is an evolution. It is a rapid, really, really fast evolution where we experiment, we build, we deploy, we optimize, and then we repeat. And that cycle is happening very, very quickly, very, very fast. And it is exciting. It's an exciting world to be in because things are happening all the time. And the conversations that we're having with you all are also helping us develop generative AI in a way that has never been around before. Myth number 2, generative AI is unable to keep your data private. That's one of the areas that most people are afraid of. How is my data being handled? That's a big myth, because as generative AI has been developed, the security and safety and encryption technologies have developed at the same time. So the question is, how are the companies and the service providers that you're using creating a safety net for your data? That's where you have the power. You have the power to demand that your data is handled in a very specific way. And those safety nets, they exist. That encryption technology, that anonymity that you may need, it exists. It just needs to be used right. So anyone using generative AI and using those models have the responsibility to protect your data. Generative AI is always smarter than humans. Not true. As long as humans have feelings and generative AI does not, it does not get to be stamped smarter. It learns faster. It has a computing power, and it processes data a lot faster. But as long as it does not include intuition, it does not include feelings, contextualizing the understanding of data, which is something humans do, generative AI will only be able to use properly with human supervision. Generative AI will reduce the workforce in your company, take over my job. I've heard this one so many times. Generative AI is going to take my job. No, but somebody who does know generative AI will take your job. So being here is a first step to making sure that there's no way your job is going to be taken over by generative AI. The main reason is that generative AI is here to complement humans. It's not here to replace humans. Mainly for the reason I literally just mentioned, which is we are here to always keep the context alive, to keep the intuition in the data, to always keep the human side of data alive, the strategy side, the vision side. Generative AI is based on data, and historic data, current data, maybe even superficial and simulated data. But it will never give you what we have, which is how do we change things? How do we make things better? How do we allow for a better future? That is not something that it will create for you. That is something that we will guide generative AI into. Bigger and better data sets. No. Bigger data sets are not always better, because if you have smaller data sets, you know exactly what kind of data you have that you're using and implementing that generative AI model on. So just because it's massive and huge and covering a lot of the internet, for example, which is one of the reasons we heard about hallucinations and answers coming out of nowhere, because it has no way of differentiating between what is reality and what is fiction. That mix is something that generative AI really cannot differentiate, because they're data sets. That's where the human side comes in. Generative AI solutions are 100% reliable and consistent. No, we all, I hope, know that. It cannot in any way be that way unless we put in the guardrails for it. We put in the safety nets. We put in the regulations needed for it to be consistent and reliable. So we have a responsibility when it comes to not only the input of data, but also what kind of output we accept and what kind of sources we show. It's immune to bias. Well, now go a little deeper into this a little further on, but absolutely not. Any data you put in, I don't know if you've heard this. Have you heard of CISO? CISO is shit in, shit out. Sorry for using that word. But if you put in bad data, you'll get bad results. Now, the danger with generative AI is that if you put in bad data, you get exponential bad results. Because it looks at trends, and it will literally, if you put in enough times 2 + 2 = 5, it will keep telling you 2 + 2 = 5. It will not back down. Generative AI has thoughts and feelings. No, it's not sentient. There's no way generative AI is sentient. What we have seen a few effects on is that when you put in data that has bias, that has judgment, where those programming it and those inputting it have specific feelings or have specific opinions, that will transpire in the data. That is what makes data look like it has emotions, when in fact it is literally just mirroring the programmers or the person who input the data's feelings. If I'm not careful, generative AI can replace human intuition and decision making. I think I've already debunked that one, so I'm not going to go too far into that one. If I'm not careful, it will tell me something inappropriate. I tried to make generative AI tell me something inappropriate. It didn't work, mainly because I was using data sets that I was in control of. If you go into OpenAI, for example, or any of the kind of larger models, you'll see that there is a risk of getting inappropriate answers. But that responsibility is not on you. The responsibility is on the company, the business that controls the data set. So you don't have to worry about it. However, if you do get inappropriate results, sue the company. So that brings me to the applications of generative AI. And I'm going to try to go through this quite quickly because many of you will recognize all of these. What applications are there out there? And I'm 100% sure, actually, because you're all in an event called Women in Tech, that I'm going to say 100% of you have been in touch with generative AI. How many here have been into ChatGPT or GPT-4 or GenAI? Up with your hand. Last year, it was not even 10% of the room. That's how quickly this went. And now I could see practically every hand raise, which is amazing, by the way. I love it, because one of our biggest responsibilities as women in tech, as humans in tech, is to be part of the technology, be part of the narrative, really use the technology and use it for good. Now, the areas that we have the most impact on are, of course, the personal use. As many of you, I'm sure, have done, you've used it to do some research. You've used it to create, play, try it around, which is awesome. I do it on a regular basis. I actually find it very fun. And as you can see, we're not alone. That's about 180 million users as of last month. That's massive of OpenAI. That's just one of the models, and OpenAI has about 60% of the market. So that really shows you how much it has been adopted. Now, that number, you could say, oh, but that's the US, there are so many people. 12% of that number is in the US. 88% of the users of GenAI in OpenAI are actually outside of the US. Text and content creation, writing emails, writing letters, writing, everybody's using it, writing articles, writing media, writing pretty much anything that needs writing. I mean, emails is the easiest one, but congratulatory letters, communication, corporate communication, those are really, really kind of common uses of it. Image and video synthesis, that's one of the areas that has actually evolved the most. Creating new images, content, video, 3D assets, you name it. Big data analysis, the best way to use generative AI is when you have massive amount of data and you need to get insight out of it. Best way of using it, and that's actually one of the areas that is the most used. Chatbots. I don't think you've actually been in touch with a customer service representative these past 6 months that hasn't been assisted by a chatbot at this time. There's no way, because really, honestly, the companies just need to save the money, so they've gone over to chatbots at a very, very high rate. So those are the most common areas of using chatbots and generative AI today. And here are key applications. Now, I actually added this at the last minute because I thought it was important in terms of your career, in terms of what areas are there that are growing. And this is straight out of Accenture's own use cases and own areas of impact. These are the areas that we see are the most development happening. I would actually attract your attention to the word personalized, and you'll find it over and over and over again on these key areas. The reason being that through generative AI, you can personalize and tailor your clients, your employees, your students, your own experience with data, experience with generating new content, experience with research. That's one of the areas that we see growing massively in terms of loyalty, in terms of, and you see it because you're the ones experiencing it. And of course, your feedback is critical there. For me, who's in innovation, the turbo rapid prototyping is something that has made a huge difference in innovation. Being able to prototype really quickly, using data very quickly, being able to fail quickly in order to succeed, that is a massive development for emerging technology and innovation in general. Enriched data, seeing data as more than just one piece of a puzzle. You see the full puzzle very quickly. You can contextualize it. You can see it. It's enriched with not only connectors, but also contextualizing, emotional, adding emotion to it because of the human element of the generative AI solutions that we are putting together. Which brings me, of course, to pros and cons, dangers. What is happening with generative AI? I'm going to let you read that one, because I actually liked it. Bill Gates said this just, well, actually a week ago. It's that new. AI and generative AI is developing at a pace we've never seen before. That's a word that's coming out of Bill Gates' own mouth. What does that mean? It could actually look scary, you know? Are there just risks here, or is it out of control? Can we control this evolution? Absolutely. Of course. I mean, I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't something positive coming out of this conversation. And there are a lot of areas that we're still kind of catching up to generative AI on. And those areas are data accuracy and plagiarism. So data accuracy, we want to know that we have the right data in our data sets. Because as I mentioned, shit in, shit out. If you have shit data, you have shit results. So figuring out data accuracy is actually the main pain point of generative AI models, because you cannot trust them unless you trust your data. Plagiarism is, of course, a huge issue for trademark, for studies, for research, for universities in general. That's something that has regulations catching up to it and will be solved very quickly. As with everything, we tend to catch up to technology with our regulations anyway. Bias and discrimination, however, is something that we need to be very careful on, because our historic data is biased. One of the reasons we're sitting here is because we are in an environment where we're still a male-dominated environment in tech. That's biased. So we don't want to be using historic data without cleaning it up and without setting up guardrails that will allow us to create a better future for ourselves and for our future generations. So historic data, great, but often biased. And any data that comes out of a human is biased, because every human being is biased. So we need to be careful and put in guardrails that are culturally and ethically stabilizing for our data and how we use it for the future. Security and safety. I mean, cybersecurity is something that is growing at the same rate as generative AI. Simply because whatever we have access to, people with criminal intent and that are going to be wanting to use this in unethical activities have the same access. So those regulations need to be put in place and need to actually be part of the responsibilities of people using generative AI. Pros and cons, I will let you kind of take that in, but I think one area that I want to keep you keep at the very forefront of your thoughts is there's a pro and con for everything, but you need to consider all of them when you're going to make decisions around generative AI. Mainly that there is the ethical, regulatory, bad data, bias side that could actually go really, really wrong for our environment and for our societies. But there is also the cost. Are we losing jobs and creating as many, or are we losing way too many jobs and not creating enough? Is our economy of scale not going to work out? We're building it. We're here. We're talking about it. We're developing it together. So what's next? I love that I'm the one saying what's next. And I'm like, well, it's not like I have I can't see into the future. Well, kind of. We can see in the future because of the fact that we're still kind of running ahead of technology in many ways, but also behind technology in many ways. We can see the effects it's going to have on so many areas. One of the main thing, of course, is privacy. We know that we need to catch up with data. We need to catch up with the privacy regulations, and we want our data to be protected. That's something that has to be a priority for us. Speed of life. Things are happening so quickly. I mean, our life there's nothing. The speed that is happening right now with our lives has never happened before. The fact that we have access to so much information, we have so much thrown at us. Their technology is just massively and exponentially growing and developing. That has never been there. We're not constructed for that. So there's a lot of work to be done for us to be able to handle what is going on around us. Regulations, and I keep saying that because it's so important, it's critical that it actually, catches up to the technology, but also enforcing it. When you have rules and regulations and laws, we need to put in place ways of enforcing those regulations and laws. So new roles, new titles, new pathways, new careers, all of that to say that in the end, we're looking at augmenting our human intelligence. It's not so much about creating something new, it's about augmenting what we already have. And the areas that we see the most impact coming up on is, of course, education. A lot of people are really afraid of this because generative AI, oh my God, it's all about cheating and answering tests, and your homework and so on. Ultimately, generative AI will allow you to personalize education for children across the board, including children that actually have disabilities. That is one of the areas that we have seen the biggest impact of generative AI on. Healthcare. World Health Organization went out with 50% of the mistakes that happen in healthcare are due to administrative error. That's something generative AI is fantastic at. Literally, the stuff that you have to do, on a work line. So things that you can automate to make sure you take the human error out of it. Those are fantastic areas to use generative AI for. Same organization, World Health Organization, is also telling us that we are going to have a shortfall of about 10 million people and workers in healthcare by 2030. Generative AI is expected to be able to help with that and address that shortage, be able to help as many people as possible with fewer and actually with that shortcoming of people in healthcare, which we've known about for a while. Finance, amazing, amazing area to work, to use generative AI on, because finance is dependent on so much data, and it's dependent also on dealing with that vast amount of data to create insight, to create vision, to create, okay, what is going to happen? We're trying to guess what's going to happen in the future and invest in the right things, and invest in the right technology, invest in the right business. Those are areas where we see a lot of change happening. Law, and when I say law, I'm actually generalizing it into risk assessment, due diligence. And for me, who's been in the investment fields and where you're dependent on your legal advisors, generative AI is a massive and amazing tool to use, because it's just the amount of data, the amount of regulation, the amount of laws that you have to go through, the amount of information, numbers. Fantastic to use generative AI on that. And honestly, I've been using it for the past year, and it's really been a great tool. Transportation. Believe it or not, we see generative AI being the solution to congestion in cities, urban congestion, traffic, parking shortage, commutes, how to make sure to build, urban communities that are functioning in a much more effective and productive way. And those are just a few areas that I wanted to mention. And I'm going to finish up by showing you a picture of a few big changes that we see happening in the business world. And those areas, the reason I wanted to share them again is because though we are talking about how generative AI is going to be changing your life and how it's going to impact your life, these are areas that we see are going to be impacting businesses already tomorrow. So this is not 5 years from now, this is not 10 years from now, this is something that is happening right now. We're going from self-service and documentation to intelligent assistance for everything. From modern-looking UI to the computer tells you tell the computer what to do, and it'll make it happen. From content is king to knowledge is the fuel for AI machines. AI and automation is everything. Business processes, from human first to automate first. We start by automating, then we check. And innovation. And I cannot end this presentation without kind of pulling the plug on that one, because right now we're in an innovate to increase revenue. Tomorrow we're going to be in innovate or die. And I'm going to end it with a quote from our CEO at Accenture, which I actually find really, really on point there. And when we create tech that better reflects how people think, feel, and understand, it becomes more accessible and can amplify our creativity and productivity, which is how we should be looking at generative AI. It is to support you. Tech is always just a tool. The future is ours to build together. Thank you so much. I would love to open it up for questions, and I hope you have a lot of questions, because that's, again, how we create a future together. Are there any questions straight up there to start with? And please feel free to either come down if you're far up, or if the audience here at the bottom would like to start by asking any questions. Did I cover all of the jargon? Do you feel that there's any vocabulary you missed, or I missed, or that you would like to get some clarification on? Yeah? Say that again. How do you stop the bad people from using AI? That's actually a very good question. You cannot stop bad people from using AI, but you can put guardrails together. You can protect both your data. You can make it very difficult for them to abuse data, abuse your access to your database. You can also stop in every hack that is done to your environment. You can counter hack using AI and using generative AI. So kind of using the same tools as counterintelligence is pretty much the way I would say it. Great question, because security is actually one of the biggest areas. Any more questions? Yeah?
As someone who's starting with generative AI development, I'm using a lot of open source models. How do we make sure that it's free of biases?
As someone who has just started developing in generative AI, how do you make sure that open source is free of bias? It's not. So open source is never free of bias. It's actually full of bias. So one way you can use it is to put in guardrails that are culturally and ethically set up. So you use actually we have ethical AI task forces, for example. We have responsible AI task forces that will support you on that. You can also actually put in pre-programmed ethical guardrails and tools that are out there that can support you on that. Some of them are free, some of them are you need to pay for, especially as a private citizen. Yeah. Thank you. Awesome questions. Yes. Have I come across have I come across generative AI models or tools for marketing development? Is that what you said? For marketing data visualization. There are quite a few. So I actually named a few when we started the presentation. So DALI 2 is one of those. There's quite a few of them, and at Accenture we're quite agnostic, so we're happy to name all of them. Feel free to actually go in and you'll find lists. You can just put those words in, and you can actually use OpenAI for that. You can actually just plug it in and say, hey, what are the tools that are out there for data visualization? And it'll actually give you that full list. That's one area that is fantastic to use GenAI for. It'll also bring the free side of things. So which ones are free? You can just plug in that in your prompt, and it'll show you exactly what to use. Yeah? So absolutely. I think that the main thing to look at is not so much what the jobs look like today and which ones of those jobs are going to be replaced. It's actually how are you enhancing the jobs that are there today, and the people that are not going to be needed in those specific jobs that have been doing a lot of work that obviously is easy to automate, because that's what generative AI does. Anything that is easy to automate should not be done by a human at this point. And that's what I was trying to say. Because what we want humans to focus on is what we're really good at, is using our intuition, using our strategies, using our skills, our emotions. Those are the areas that we're the best at. So we're going to see new positions and new jobs being created. A lot of it has to do with human supervision of generative AI solutions, of data solutions, where we always need the human element to make it work. Yes? I need to come closer to hear what you said. Go ahead. Yes, okay. So in many ways, you cannot do that. We're putting that responsibility on the businesses that are generating it. So that's part of the transparency regulations that we're putting in place. The regulations are going to be actually putting a lot of responsibility on the businesses that are creating generative AI tools. So when you're using it, what you're creating is already going to be identified as generative AI creation, no matter what it is. Any more questions? And please feel free. Yes, go ahead. Oh, I have the light right in my face, so I can't see everyone. Where? Keep your hand open. Oh, there. Yes. In healthcare. So how mature is the use of generative AI in healthcare? Believe it or not, quite mature. We've been using generative AI for quite some time, and we're at time. So thank you so much, everybody. But I love the questions. Thank you for having me here. Feel free to grab me. Feel free to connect with me. Here's my LinkedIn if you want to add me there. And if you have any additional questions, I'll be around. Happy to connect with you all. Thank you so much.